Welcome to Equal Entertainment. I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist, Vice President and Executive Producer of Entertainment for The Advocate. It's the 20th anniversary of a beloved queer classic you're sure to remember, The L Word. The series followed the lives of a close-knit group of lesbians and bisexual women as they navigated love, loss, and their careers in Los Angeles. The L Word premiered in 2004, a time when only 12 queer characters were on the screen. But what TV executives and networks might not have known at the time was that it would soon shatter stereotypes and change the landscape for queer characters on television. I chatted with one of the show's directors, Rose Troche, about the early days of filming and her thoughts on the show's remarkable legacy. You directed the pilot, and I wonder if you would talk just a little bit about your earliest memories of hearing about the L Word in the business and what that was about and your reaction to first hearing about it.
There wasn't much that I heard about it except from a call from my agent saying there's this show that's going and they're interested in you for the pilot. You want to meet on it.
Yeah.
And I had just gotten done making my third feature called Safety of Objects. And I was like, oh my goodness, a gay thing, and I was like, and I also got offered this other pilot called The Ranch, which was about legalized prostitution in that was Showtime was doing about legalized prostitution in Nevada. Yeah. And I was just like, what has more legs, like lesbians in LA or hookers in Nevada, sex workers in Nevada. And I was just like, okay, I think the lesbian show definitely has that. And then I understood that Jennifer Beals was on board and that Pam Grier was on board. And then everyone else we had to cast from there. But yes, luckily I got the job and the rest is sort of history.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you a little bit about the landscape of TV at that time. There was not much in the way of queer characters on TV. And of course, just about 10 years earlier, you had directed Go Fish, which, is still this landmark film about a group of queer women where it's not about coming out, where it's not traumatic. And so I wonder, would you talk a little bit about where the landscape was on TV at the time that you directed the L Word pilot?
Well, I think what was happening is that, if I recall correct, well, Queer as Folk had been on Showtime.
Right,
Showtime was the, why am I forgetting Jerry's last name? That's so terrible. Gary Levine and Jerry Jerry was the head of Showtime at that time, and I think was a really big advocate for queer and diverse work, right? And so it was really amazing to get into it while he was still in charge. And then I think Bob Greenblatt took over after Jerry left, kind of shifted, every time you have someone take over a network, it'll shift kind of the mandate of that network, but we were already in, and we were already, I think, a bit of a hit at that point. So that was good. And you did see the show reflect a slight bit of a change between season 1 and season 2. It got a little more glamorous. I think Sex and the City had ended. And so I think the billboards at that time were same sex, different city.
Right. I remember.
Yeah. That. I don't know if you were in like LA at the time. Yeah, but the billboards were like, same sex, different city.
That's such a good
tag.
So
they really were trying to go for that market, like really hit that market, which I think perhaps they probably did.
Yeah.
A little bit. Pulled from, who doesn't want to see women fail upward and, and get whoever they want. You know what I mean? Well, every woman wants that kind of wish fulfillment,
It's ruined my life. I mean, because I thought that's what my life was going to be.
Yeah, totally. We're just all like, oh, it doesn't matter if I lose that job. I'm just going to get a better one.
I did want to talk to you a little bit about some of your memories from that time shooting the pilot in Vancouver. We got some anecdotal stories from Kate and Leisha's podcast, the Pants podcast, which is really fun. But I'd love to hear some of your memories of meeting Mia Kirshner, Kate Menig, Leisha Haley, all of that.
Early memories were, I think I think the process of casting was really, really intense and was something that was like joyful and intense. And of course I had my favorites and, convincing sort of Jerry and Gary and the folks at Showtime, Eileen and I, very much like saying, no, this is what lesbians want, like trust us. This is, we know these things, they will like Kate,
Yeah.
Leisha will be a, you know, and so, so all the negotiations of like, who can we get on the show? I think, like I had to send Leisha home to get dressed again because I really wanted her to be on the show. And not that was a big, hill to climb, but like, Erin Daniels, like kind of same thing. I'm like, which was funny because she was straight. She is, she was, I mean, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't say what her sexuality is because sexuality is a fluid thing and who knows what, like,
she's an honorary
at that time.
Exactly.
But they were just like, gosh, she looks a little too hard. I'm like, let's soften you up, like take that hair down. But it was really a fun moment. And of course, I think what was really, because this was my first pilot, I was really, I was sort of like, oh, this is the way it always happens. Like everybody always gets along so in such a lovely manner and like lives together and has dinners on the weekends together and all the things that the girls did, that were, I think, they had their friendships and they had their, I'm not the kind of director who tries to really get it like, hey, invite me too. Because I think there has to be still like a professional, like kind of thing happening, even though those guys are my friends and, we do have a plan to meet. Let's see if it happens. But it's just one of these things where it was just like the camaraderie was really lovely, and and Mia was sort of this enigmatic kind of Canadian star who had done this Adam Agoyan movie and had, and so she always had that kind of thing about her that was a little bit different and less rough and tumble than some of the other actors. Not to call them rough and tumble, but she was a little more enigmatic, yes. Which I think she brought to the character as well. I mean,
100%. The kind of the outsider coming in and infiltrating friend group.
Yeah. But just like such a lovely bunch of women, and well, here's what I love about doing a pilot and doing. There were several things about the L Word that were really, really special, which happened to me during Go Fish as well, right?
Mm.
Which is that we all thought we were there to make a show by, for, and about. That was Go Fish. With this one, everybody, no matter what their sexuality, thought that we were really doing something special for the lesbian community and for queers in general and for visibility and really for the kids in the middle of the country who were gay or lesbian, and for women to kind of see themselves as winning, you know what I mean? As powerful, as, it's just like, it's sort of like what I love about the L Word. And I think what we miss particularly about the original L Word is this sort of like fantasy sense of success, this kind of like, it's aspirational. And we don't get a lot of that as women, in an insular world that really is, we're friends, we have this community, we will hold each other up in, almost like a marriage vow, kind of hold each other up.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think we wanted to show as well, which was like community.
And that sense of community definitely resonated with me. In fact, looking back on the 90s and early 2000s, many of us even found the show revolutionary. GlAAD's entertainment research and analysis manager, Raina Deerwater, weighed in on the L Word's impact. He also shares what GlAAD's research reveals about the evolution of queer characters on screen over the past 2 decades.
Go Fish came out in theaters in the early 90s. I saw that twice in the theaters. That was the first thing I ever saw that centered a group of lesbian friends or queer women friends. And so when the L Word happened in 2004, it was a revelation to me, although I'd been out since the 80s. So would you talk a little bit about the history of queer TV to that point when the L Word debuted?
In the early days, it was very much like you get like the first report counted 12 series regular characters, and now that number is up in the hundreds. So it's just things like that where it's like it was very minimal, and it was also honestly like mostly men. And it was still like very exciting to see like a Will and Grace or like a My So-Called Life or like whatever, and you're like, oh my god, there's a gay person, like gasp, there's a gay person. I think in all the reports, like up until and including when the L Word was airing, there were always more men than women in the numbers. And like it's only until like very recently that that number has sort of shifted to more of like a parity, or in a couple years like parity, not parody, but like and there are a couple years where they're like slightly more women, so it's gotten to a balance. But in that time, like the early aughts when the L Word started, it was very much mostly women. And I actually went back into the stats and looked at sort of
you mean mostly men?
Mostly men. Yep.
Yeah, got it.
All right. While the L Word was airing, it was mostly men.
Yeah.
I wish. But anyway, I went back and like
too.
dug into some of those old statistics, and like for the 2004-2005 season, there were 12 LGBTQ women on TV, and 7 of them were on the L Word. So it was kind of like, and then as the years progressed, like there became more, like both more characters and more women. But that's sort of that initial like 2004-2005 report, like when the L Word was just starting to be like over half of all like queer women, like lesbian, bisexual women, like all, there are only 12 of them, and like on cable and broadcast in a pre-streaming era. And then like so those 7. So and it's also interesting to watch that number sort of like get larger. Like by the time the L Word ended in 2009, there were 53 LGBTQ women on, like regular and recurring, and 10 of them were on the L Word. So it went from over 50% to sort of like 20%, which is still like a very large percentage for one show. But it is cool to see that like evolution during the time even the L Word was on the air.
You can watch the Advocate channel live by downloading our app in the Apple or Google Play Store. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. For the Advocate channel, I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist, and thank you for watching.